This video is gonna be about how you refinish a door. Now, in this particular video, I'm not gonna strip the existing coating all the way off and go down to raw wood. So if you had a door that was in really bad shape, you would have to chemically strip it, and that'll be a different video. So what we're gonna do in this video is we have a door that maybe has some scratches, some nicks, and we're just gonna freshen it up and make it look nicer. And so the overall process is we're going to touch up the stain and then we're gonna clear coat it. A lot of times you can do this while the door's still hanging, but in the field, if we're doing like a whole house, most of the time, we're going to do this in place. But for the purposes of this video, I'm setting it up on a table so it makes it a little easier to see. And if you're doing a DIY project, you're probably gonna wanna do it more like this, just because it's a little easier for you to manage if this is not something you're doing all day, every day. So the first thing that we've done is we've put a nice soft cloth down on the table because we don't want to scratch up the underneath side of the door. We've also taken off the hardware. A lot of times in the field, we actually don't take off all of the hardware because if you're doing 20 doors, it can be kind of a pain to deal with all the different hardware. But if you're doing one-off doors or if you're doing a DIY project, it's probably best to take it off just because, again, it's not something that you're doing all day, every day. And so your skill may not be quite as good as someone who's doing it all the time. So we've taken everything off, and the first step is we're gonna just dust off the door. Again, we're just gonna make sure there's no big, globs of dust or dirt, and we're gonna make sure the door's clean. And then we're also going to take a sanding block, and we're just gonna lightly sand. And again, what that does, it just gets any of, grit through the years. It could just have some imperfections, and it just ensures that you get a really good high quality finish when we apply the finish product, which is a polyurethane varnish. And so we're gonna lightly sand, and then we're going to dust, again, using a rag or a dust brush. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a little bit of stain on the rag, and I'm gonna demonstrate kind of what that looks like. And you're gonna see the whole thing done in kind of a time lapse, but I just wanna kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about here. So I'm literally just dipping the rag a little bit into the stain, just enough so it's on there. And then I'm gonna go through and wipe down the door, almost like you would if you're just like drying a dish or just wiping down a window, something like that. And all we're doing is looking to fill in any hairline cracks and just kind of brightening it up. So the analogy I use most of the time is think about just putting some furniture polish on the door. That's more or less what we're doing. We're just trying to polish it, dress it up a little bit, and make it look a little nicer. So we'd go through, kind of do this, and then after we've done that on the whole entire door, then we're gonna let that dry. And then what we're going to do is we're gonna mix the stain and the varnish together. And what that does is it just helps unify the color a little bit. Now, if your door doesn't have any imperfections in the stain, you can just put some clear coat on it. I typically, even if there's just minor imperfections, I'll put a little stain in it, and it just helps with the overall finish. In my opinion, makes it look a little richer. They do sell some different products. I think it's called Polyshade. So there's different names depending on the manufacturer, where it's already pre-mixed, and you can do that as well. The biggest thing, if you are gonna mix it yourself, you wanna make sure that everything is compatible. And so one of the easiest ways to do that is to look at the cleanup. And so if one product is clean up soap and water, and one product is clean up with mineral spirits or lacquer thinner or xylene or any other solvent, that does not work. And so you wanna make sure that both are having the same cleanup. And you can also look, like for instance on this, it says oil base or premium oil at the top. And then I know the Minwax stains, it says the same thing, premium oil at the top. And so I know that both of these are Minwax and they're both the same base. And so they're gonna be compatible. Also be careful, just because they're both Minwax doesn't always mean that they're compatible. Sometimes you'll have a water-based Minwax or an oil-based Minwax. So that is very important. When you mix them to the trained eye, you'll be able to tell because they'll kind of separate. But if you're, again, doing kind of a DIY project, you may not notice that right away. All right, so we're gonna mix this together and I'm gonna show you a few things. So the main component that we wanna use is the poly. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put some polyurethane in this cut bucket, and this will help us just mix it a little easier and get easier access to it. The ratio, to be honest, I don't have a very precise ratio that I go by. It really depends on the condition definition. The more stain you put into the poly, then the darker it's gonna get. In this case, we don't want it real dark. We just wanna kind of freshen it up. So I'm literally just gonna take the stain and I'm just gonna put a little bit in there, drizzle, maybe, I don't know, a capful or two, and just add some color to it. In this particular case, we're not necessarily trying to match anything, we're just doing some demonstration. If you're trying to match something, maybe do a sample, you can't take the stain out, start light, add more to it. And so I would also recommend, if you're doing a bunch of doors, go ahead and mix up enough to do all of them. What would be frustrating is if you mix up enough stain to do 1 or 2 doors, but you have 10 doors to do, and then 2 of the doors are different than all the other doors, or if you're only mixing up enough to do 2 or 3 doors at a time, you're gonna end up with some variations. Or be very systematic in how you mix it. And so there's my disclosure. So make sure you do a good job with that. And I realized as we were getting ready to make this, I didn't have an official paint stick with me. So I'm using this little plastic scraper to mix this. And so that is important, just to mix it up really well. Make sure you have a good finish. And once that's done, you're ready to go. And so you can kind of see, I can see it better here in person than you probably will on the camera. It's just got a slight tint to it. And as we begin to paint this out, you'll be able to see kind of the color transformation. So I'm gonna bring Moses in and we're gonna paint this door or clear coat this door with a little bit of stain, and we'll show you what this finished product looks like. So as you can see, we're just going through and gently wiping in the stain, and it's really not making a lot of difference, but it's brightening it up a little bit. And so again, think of furniture polish, just going through, freshening it up, and just trying to add a little extra color and give it that little extra pop so it looks like a new door or as close to it as we can. And if you can kind of see it on the camera, it has a nice little shine to it, which is good, but it's also probably an indicator that the stain's a little wet. So I bet you if I touch it, I'll get a little residue on my hand, which I do. And so there's not a lot of stain on here, but you probably should still let it dry for a little bit before you start clear coating into any issues. So the next step is going to be applying the clear coat that we've mixed some of the stain into. Now, we're using some of the stain that already has some of the clear coat, which is fine as well. You can also use stain without any clear coat mixed in, just for like the touch-up portion. So now we're gonna let this dry for a couple minutes, and then we're gonna come back and add the polyurethane that has the stain mixed in, and then we're done. So we've let the door dry a little bit, and so now we're gonna go ahead and apply the polyurethane. So I'm gonna have Moses going through and apply it. One thing to consider when you're doing this is you don't wanna over apply. So with an oil-based product, it takes a little bit more time for it to dry, and if you apply it too heavy, it will actually just kind of skim over on the top and it won't dry underneath. So you wanna apply a good coat, but you don't wanna over apply it. And so if it's an upright door, then you wanna even be more cautious because it'll run and you'll get a lot of sags in your finish. So laying it down flat is a great way to do it, especially if you're DIYing. But in this case, we're laying it down just because it's easier to show, but we wanna apply a healthy coat, but not over apply. And you just gonna have to kind of get a feel for it. So a nice consistent coat is what we're looking for, and we'll show you what that looks like here in a few minutes. So just want to give a little feedback and commentary on what's going on here. So if you've noticed, I know that was in a time lapse, so I can't see all the details very clearly, but we did the panels individually. And what that does is it just makes it easy to work with. What you don't want to do, really on any surface, is you don't want to start painting or clear coating in a flat area and then let it sit and then come back into it later. So what you want to do is you want to get the panels done, and then you can come back and hit what we call kind of the flat parts around the perimeter of the door. And that's just going to help make it a more uniform finish. If he was to come back up here and start messing with one of these panels after the coating has started to tack up a little bit, you're really gonna mess up the finish. And so we call it, you don't wanna play with it. You don't wanna get back in and start messing with it. Even if you notice an imperfection, really the only thing you can do is just let it dry, come back, sand it, and then recoat it. If you try to go in and fix it while it's, kind of dry, but not all the way dry, honestly, you're just gonna make a big mess. So do the panels individually and then go back and do the flat part. And if you notice, every time he's going to a new piece of wood, he's actually going with the grain as well. And so with this area right here, you wouldn't want to carry this board all the way across because the grain is different. So you wanna take it from this corner to this corner and go with the grain. And then once you get over here on this section, you wanna go from this corner to that corner with the grain. And it just ensures a really nice, good finish. If you go against the grain, it is possible that you're gonna see some brush marks or just some inconsistencies in the finish. And so I'm gonna step out of his way so I don't mess up his process. But if you notice, he started at the bottom and he's working his way up towards the top. And it's just, again, ensuring that we have a really good, high quality finish that looks uniform. Now that the door has been completely coated, we're just gonna let it sit right here. And so if this door was hanging, then you could, leave it where it is. You just wanna be careful. Clear coat can take a little bit more time, specifically oil-based clear coat. A couple things to be aware of if you're doing this in your home. It has a little bit more of an odor. So if you're really sensitive to odors and that type of thing, just be aware of that. I often tell people it's kind of just like a new car smell. You can smell the fresh coat or coating, but it shouldn't be overwhelming. You do want to make sure there's some ventilation. So if you're doing this in your home and you're doing it in a bedroom, open up some windows, make sure there's some airflow, maybe wear some respiration, a mask or something like that. But in this case, we're actually in a garage and we got the doors open. There's a lot of ventilation, so there's no issue with that. Another thing, you don't want to do it in direct sunlight. And the reason is you'll get inconsistencies in the finish. And then you also don't want to do this in high humidity. So if it was raining outside and there was a lot of humidity, we would also get inconsistencies in the finish because the humidity, the moisture would have a negative effect with how things are drying. So there are some factors, but if you have a nice, cool, hot day, that's fine. Just don't be directly in the sun. If it's raining outside, you might want to move it inside just so you don't get that high humidity, or just wait and do it on a different day. If you have any questions, let us know, leave us some comments, and we look forward to seeing you on some of our other videos.